Imagine a secret society of rogues operating in plain sight, using code words to plot elaborate felonies and hoaxes. Well, from the 16th to the 19th centuries, Europeans believed in exactly that. According to multiple sources, these rogues spoke in a secret dialect called Thieves Cant, which could supposedly be used to describe everything from jewelry heists to common foods. But was it a real dialect, or was it simply invented by authors to sell books? Today, we're going to take a look at Thieves Cant, a secret language used by criminals for centuries. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel and let us know in the comments below what other historic jargon you would like to hear about. Okay, let's learn more about thieves and liars who kill indirectly, unintentionally, and with no other weapon than their tongues and malice. No one, no matter how famous or influential in history, is immune to being taken in by a fast-talking con man. Even Reformation leader Martin Luther was allegedly cheated by thieves speaking a secret dialect. In 1528, Luther wrote the preface for a German edition of a text called Der Liber Vagatorum, which was later titled The Book of Vagabonds and Beggars in English. The book contained a glossary of thieves' cant, explaining the coded language to readers. In his preface, Luther claimed that he had been cheated and befooled by such tramps and liars more than he wished to confess. Clearly, he wasn't too happy about it. In Luther's words, the slang was proof of how mightily the devil rules in this world. 16th century readers became entranced by the idea of a secret villainous society operating out in the open. In 1566, Thomas Harmon published A Caveat for Common Cursitors, in which he claims that rogues used a secret language called Thieves Cant to lay out their unlawful schemes right in front of upstanding citizens. Harmon claimed his book was for the utility and profit of his natural country. According to the author, spreading information about Thieves Cant was good, necessary, and his bounden duty, because he was showing readers the abominable, wicked, and detestable behavior of all these rowdy, ragged rabblemen of rakehells. That's a catchy phrase. The popularity of Harmon's book incited a trend of copycat glossaries, dictionaries, and pamphlets on Thieves Cant. In fact, as late as 1859, a New York police chief named George W. Matsell published the Rogues' Lexicon, so readers could better understand outlaws. According to multiple popular books, thieves, or rogues, as they're known amongst people who play Dungeons and Dragons, took a solemn oath when they joined an underground society of outlaws. In Richard Head's 17th century book, The Canting Academy, he described how this oath worked. Allegedly, the thieves chose nicknames and consciously forgot their birth names before swearing to be a true brother and to obey the commands of the Great Tawny Prince. While it's not entirely clear who the Great Tawny Prince is, the term is most likely a reference to the devil. This vow also mentioned their coded language and its enforced secrecy. I will not teach anyone to cant, nor will I disclose aught of our mysteries to them, although they flog me. In other words, the first rule of Thieves Cant is you don't talk about Thieves Cant. Thief, of course, is a bit of a catch-all term. There are lots of different kinds of thieves, and Thieves Cant allegedly have names for all of them. So, for example, a prigger refers to a thief, but each prigger often carried different titles depending on their desired loot. Priggers of prancers took horses, while priggers of cacklers snatched hens. Thieves also called themselves coney-catchers, using the term coney, a nickname for rabbits, to describe helpless victims. A lockpicker was called a cate, and counterfeiters were said to draw the king's picture. This terminology got so specific, the Thieves Cant even coined a term for people who stole wet clothes from clotheslines. Lully priggers. That's a great name for a 90s all-female punk band. In the 16th century, English vagrancy laws were incredibly harsh. After a third offense, vagrants sometimes faced capital punishment. They'd actually kill you for being a vagrant. This was, in part, because Thieves Cant pamphlets, like Thomas Harmon's aforementioned Caveat for Common Cursitors, became one of the most popular Thieves Cant texts. In fact, some believe it was Harmon who popularized rogues as a new term for thieves. He argued that vagrants and thieves were all part of a law-breaking underground of impoverished rogues, and the hysteria he created was a factor in the ever-increasing harshness of the penalties that vagrants faced. Harmon's book was so successful, it completely changed the way society viewed these people. For example, before the book, beggars might be branded with a V for vagrant as punishment. After the success of the book, they were branded with R, outing them as rogues. That might not seem like a big deal to us, but to them, rogues were a lot more dangerous than vagrants. Criminals spend a lot of time worrying about getting caught committing a crime. So as you might guess, Thieves Cant contain multiple terms related to getting busted and the consequences thereof. For example, cattle rustlers worried about getting sent to the picture frame, which was another way of referring to the gallows. The judges who ultimately controlled the fate of the accused were called fortune tellers, and all thieves fretted over getting frumagemmed, which was another term for being hanged. Most imaginatively, to climb the gallows was to ride a horse foaled by an acorn, which makes the experience sound a lot more fun than it probably was. Of course, the best part of being a successful thief is the loot, and unsurprisingly, the Thieves Cant had a whole heap of code named to discuss the items the thieves snatched. For example, jewelry thieves might be after a chunk o' gin, which was code for a diamond, or a chunk o' brandy, which indicated a ruby. Sapphires were referred to as berry wine, while the less glamorous-sounding Irish apricots, which you might assume refers to a precious stone, were actually just potatoes. Not every thief stole jewels, some were just hungry. Thieves' Cant dictionaries promised to expose a secret world, simultaneously entrancing and repulsing readers. One glossary of the cant promised that readers would find the devil's cabinet open inside. And they delivered some pretty scary stuff. For example, according to a 1760 dictionary of Thieves' Cant, innocent people were well served to avoid badgers. This term didn't refer to the fuzzy-faced omnivore of the scientific family Mustelidae, but rather to a crew of desperate villains who rob and slay near rivers and then throw the remains therein. The Thieves' Cant was a code, and as such, it was meant to be difficult for outsiders to understand. That being said, some of it was so downright indecipherable it borders on completely random. If a modern person heard someone use the name Oliver, they might think of the classic musical based on Charles Dickens' book, Oliver Twist. But if a 16th century rogue mentioned Oliver, he was using thieves' code to reference the moon. Why was the moon named Oliver? Nobody really knows. But that's just the beginning. The Thieves' Cant contain far more befuddling code words. Marriage music meant crying children. Rhino was code for money. And rogues called eggs cackling farts. While no one knows exactly how much of the Thieves' Cant was real and how much was imagined by authors, at least several modern words can be traced back to the secretive code. The word phony finds its origin in the cant. As early as 1770, English thieves were practicing a ruse called the phony rig. In this scheme, a rogue would drop a cheap ring in front of their mark. They would then offer to sell it for less than its supposed worth, although the jewelry's true value was next to nothing. The phony, or ring, was a fake used to trick the mark. Some linguists believe the thieves may have adapted the word phony from foina, the Irish word for ring, but that's just a guess. Your average modern person doesn't need code words to refer to the moon or eggs. But many modern words related to law-breaking still come from Thieves' Cant. A swindler, for example, refers to a liar or cheat in modern English, which is exactly how outlaws used the term centuries ago. Similarly, the word pigeon is still used to describe someone who easily falls for a con. Thieves' Cant also turned grease into a term for bribing someone and popularized the phrase left in the lurch as an idiom for betrayal. All of these terms, still fairly common in modern parlance, were borrowed or perhaps stolen from Thieves' Cant. In England, Thieves' Cant had another name, peddler's French. Though it might be confusing, this nickname didn't mean the dialect originated in France. In reality, it was a subtle way for the English to insult the French. Europeans of the era were apparently big on naming things in a way that insulted each other. For example, Italians called syphilis the French disease, while the French attempted to rename it the Italian disease. But while scholars agree Thieves' Cant didn't come from France, they can't seem to agree on where it did originate. Researchers have detected French, English, Italian, Russian, Latin, Yiddish, and Romany influences within the slang terms. But its true roots remain unknown. English prisoners revived Thieves' Cant as recently as 2009 to smuggle controlled substances into penitentiaries. The criminals called dope chat, or onic, while crack was cobby. According to an anonymous source working at HM Prison Buckley Hall in England, it was the most ingenious use of a secret code authorities had ever come across. The source explained that Elizabethan cant was only used by a tiny number of people, and it is quite amazing that it has been resurrected in order to buy substances. Some inmates will try anything to get contraband behind bars. While the idea of thieves' cant may be tantalizing, many scholars argue that the secret dialect outlined in Thomas Harmon's 16th century dictionary was fabricated. Harmon may have incorporated some actual slang in his book, but some sections were likely the product of his own invention. His stories about clever rogues, for example, were simply lifted from folklore. And while authors like Charles Dickens later used thieves' cant in their novels to make their tales seem more realistic, many thieves' cant dictionaries simply borrowed from earlier versions, potentially repeating fabricated words. That being said, author Maurizio Gatti notes that several courts' records mention thieves' cant, indicating that at least some words were legitimate. So if the cant was real, seems like those thieves did a good job keeping their secrets. So what do you think? What's your favorite thieves' cant word? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.